Welcome to ILTV's Israel Weekly. Our topics today are the U.S. administration's announcement that it will deny the Palestinian right of return, as well as Netanyahu's recent trip to Lithuania, in which he tried to convince EU leaders to change their stance on Israel. Joining me in the studio are research associate at the Begin Sadat Center for Strategic Studies at Bar-Ilan University, Dr. Mordechai Kedar. Thank you for joining us. Also with us, candidate for the Knesset in the Likud party, Naftali Ben-Simon.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Hebrew University political science professor, Professor Moshe Amirav. Thank you
very much.
And strategic advisor, Yoram Dori. Thank you, Yoram.
Hi.
U.S. President Trump has announced a new policy that will cancel the Palestinian right of return for the descendants of refugees from Israel. The U.S. will no longer accept the definition of the Palestinian refugee as defined by UNRWA, the UN Organization for Palestinian Refugees, and will recognize a portion of the refugees. Many leaders, such as MK Israel Katz, congratulated Trump on the decision. He wrote on his Twitter account, quote, "I congratulate Trump for withdrawing recognition of UNRWA and nullifying the recognition of the Palestinian right of return. This step joins the historic decision to transfer the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, thereby effectively nullifying the UN resolutions and recognizing the right of return. I recognize this as a great victory for Israel." Their announcement comes amidst a recent announcement that the Trump administration plans to cut over $200 million in funding to the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, stating that Hamas's control of Gaza was the reason they are limiting the funds. U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton had this to say at a recent press conference in Jerusalem.
Any agreement between Israel and the Palestinians, whatever shape it takes, is going to require agreement of the parties. It's not something the U.S. is prepared to force on anybody. In terms of Hamas, dealing with the terrorist group is you get what you might expect from it. I can't even begin to count the number of ceasefires we've heard from Hamas, Hezbollah, other terrorist groups over the years. I would be stunned if anybody in the government of Israel is viewing this with anything other than very, very clear-eyed understanding of what it's about. If Hamas cared more about the people of the Gaza Strip than their political priorities, we wouldn't have a lot of these troubles. And I think it's a sad outcome for the Palestinian people that all they've got now is a choice between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. So there are a lot of prospects really to find ways here to resolve some of these problems and give the people of Palestine, who have been used as agents by radical leaders over the years for their own political purposes, to give them and their families a chance for a decent life going forward. And I think that's the ultimate objective of the peace plan that the President has been overseeing. And when we're ready to roll it out, and we do, I hope that'll be visible to all the affected stakeholders in the region.
Professor Amirav, going back to the right of return, you recently attended a conference in Morocco for UNRWA. Can you talk about that conference?
Yeah, basically it's a conference that the Arab and Muslim countries have in Morocco, because the chairman of this conference is usually the King of Morocco, who is in charge on Jerusalem. But the subjects were Jerusalem and the refugees. So on the question of refugees, I, as Israeli, was the only Israeli there. I said what I'm going to say right now is that this is a problem of the children, of the grandchildren of the refugees. When I went with my Prime Minister, Ehud Barak, to Camp David some years ago, I looked into the numbers, how many refugees, really refugees, are in the world. And I said it in Morocco, and they were a little bit surprised that there are not more than 15,000 refugees. Abu Mazen is one of them, left in the world. So we are talking actually about the children, the grandchildren of the refugees. Most of them are kept in camps by the Palestinians and by authorities and by the countries, the Arab countries. So what I said in this conference, and they didn't like to hear it so much, is that there is no a problem. There is not a problem of refugees. What we need is peace, and in peace we can find a solution also to the refugees. But I'm very glad about the situation in which the United States is saying very clearly that this is not the problem. To put this as the problem, it's really ridiculous. And I think that we have to deal with the question of the conflict, and including is also the question of refugees, some refugees. That's not the main issue.
Naftali, how do you respond to the U.S. announcement?
First of all, we are in a very special day, and I would like to send my condolences to the American people for the death of a great American patriot, Senator John McCain,
Yes.
who passed away, and my prayer with the family and with the American people. And vis-a-vis the refugees issue, I think for the first time, American administration is talking clearly to the Palestinian people and to the Palestinian leadership. You cannot continue with this gambling game of refugees and statistics and politics. We must put an end. And for me, it's a very good sign because it's very good for the Palestinians. It's very good for the people who think that they are care about the Palestinian to take care about this issue of the refugees and UNRWA and the law of return of the Palestinian returns. And this is a beginning, and I hope to see more determination from the American administration.
Dr. Kedar, can you talk about what you think Trump's strategy is in this announcement?
Well, I think he wants to clear the table. He took off from the table the Jerusalem issue. It's not anymore an issue, especially in his view. And now the refugees are being wiped off from the table. And what remains to do is to draw some lines and to have a peace agreement. This, I think, is a very well known of business people, how to negotiate. Let's wipe off the table the big problems and stay with the small problems, which are easy to manage. And this is, in my view, is the strategy.
Yoram, can you talk about the objectives of the U.S. administration?
You know, I'm familiar with the Israeli political system and the international political system, especially the relations with the United States, for at least 20 years. I didn't met even one American president who was in favor of what I call the claim of return of the Palestinian. I met with President Clinton, I met with President Bush, I met with President Obama. No of these presidents ever supported the claims of return of the Palestinian. So I'm not applauding so much to President Trump of what he is tweeting, or maybe he will tweet tomorrow. Second, I know the conflict is between Israel and the Palestinian. It is not between United States and the Palestinian. It is not between Israel and United States. We have to find a solution between us and the Palestinian by direct or indirect negotiation. It doesn't matter the formula, but the agreement is between Israel and the Palestinian. And President Trump can tweet 100 times that he is denying the right of return of the Palestinian, or as I call it, the claim of return. It will not change a single word in the demands of the Palestinian. Let's assume that the opposite would happen, okay? That President Trump would tweet that he is against the law of return of Israel. So what? Do you know any Israeli, even one Israeli, who will accept it? No.
Yeah, but the question, Yoram, it's UNRWA budget, UNRWA politics.
I want to tell you something about the budget.
This is a good start to deal with UNRWA.
Naftali, the $200 million cut of $200 million cut of the budget is a cut of the budget of the State of Israel, not of the Palestinians, because we are responsible for the lives of the Palestinians. They are under...
Who told you?
Yeah, you. Who told me? I know. That happened until Oslo, and that can happen...
No.
Yeah, no, because any humanitarian crisis in the West Bank will come to our table, and I will pay from my pocket through the Israeli budget for the education of the Palestinians. And it's better that the Americans are doing things.
Let's let Dr. Kedar
I'm talking about hypocrisy. The Arabs created the Palestinian refugees problem by invading this country one day after the state was declared in May 1948. The Arabs were not called to support these people. Where is the Saudi money? Where is the Qatari money? Where is the Emirati money to support these people? No, let the world do it. And this is the time where the Arabs should start pay them. And if Israel would say anything about
You
this,
want to get
they
the
will
phone
be,
number?
They will be
Call them and
ashamed.
ask them. They will
They will
not
be
do it.
ashamed.
They will not do it.
Of course
they
they
didn't
don't.
do it for the
You know
last
why?
70 years.
Because
Put
for
your
them the
head
whole-
into the sand,
Because
please.
for the Arab world, the refugees problem is only a political problem. How to destroy Israel? They couldn't care less about the Palestinians. From there, look at Syria. Half a million of Palestinians who were living in Syria until 2011. Where are they today? Evaporated, dispersed all over the world. Who says anything about this? And have you heard any Arab who talks about this?
You have
half
claims
a
against
million,
the war?
500,000 Palestinians, means descendants of Palestinians, who lived in Yarmouk and in some 9 more Palestinian refugee camps in Syria. They are not there today.
So-
they're in Jordan, they're in Turkey, they're in Europe, they're in America, they're in all over the world. Who cares? Nobody cares.
It is a very intelligent overview. But if there will be starvation in Jenin, Israel
There's no
will be
starvation in
excused
Jenin
and pay
because
for
everybody
it.
can go
There
out
is
to work.
prosperity in
That's
Jenin,
it.
no
No,
starvation.
okay.
Let's
I
go
If
said
they don't get
if.
the money, they will start
I said
working.
if.
No, not,
What is
no,
it?
You should have some control on the discussion here because we can shout.
Yes.
No, not
All of us, we can shout.
no,
Natalie, what are your
I-
comments?
shouting.
I'm amazed from the European and the liberal hypocrisy towards the Palestinian refugees, because we know the truth. Ramallah and Jenin and Jericho and Nablus and other cities are prospering, and we start to what we call to create the Palestinian autonomy de facto. Now we come again with the numbers of refugees, and we give them some kind of hope that maybe we will go back to Haifa, Tel Aviv, Tzfat, and other cities in Israel. So we must put an end. And I'm glad that Trump, I hope that it's not only a tweet, but it's a whole policy that to deal with UNRWA and to put an end of this game that did nothing for 70 years for the Palestinian people.
Thank
Can
you.
I tell you a short story? Very short
Well,
one.
actually, we have another topic to talk about, but
No, that's very important about the right of return. I tell it my students, I
Okay.
would like everybody to hear it.
Okay,
Okay.
sure.
Many years ago, I went to see Arafat. We were sitting together, and he said to me, Professor Amirav, I know you live in an Arab house, and even I know the family that owns your house. So I said, so, Mr. Chairman, what do you mean by that? He will come back, he will throw me out of my house. He said, do you have any other idea? I said, yes, I have. Because I went to Lithuania, and I saw the house of my grandfather. And you know what I saw there? I saw there was a piece of copper with the name of my family there. And the Jews are not living there anymore. So I said to Mr. Arafat, this is the solution. I'm not going to leave my house, but I'm ready to put a sign. Here was the family of Salman in the years this and this and this. That's okay, but that's symbolic. They will never, ever be able to come back to my house.
It's a very moving story. And actually, that brings us to our next topic of Lithuania. So we'll move on. Thank you for sharing that with us. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu just completed a 3-day visit to Lithuania for a Baltic summit. His goal is to strengthen relations with Eastern European nations and balance the European Union's unfriendly attitude towards the State of Israel in order to achieve a more fair treatment towards Israel. Meanwhile, on Thursday, Israel and the U.S. slammed an EU decision to give millions of dollars in economic aid to Iran. Netanyahu called it a poison pill to the Iranian people, claiming the money will not go towards schools, hospitals, and solving the water problems, but rather to missiles and Revolutionary Guards in Iran and Syria. Netanyahu hoped with his visit to Lithuania to convince European nations to put more pressure on Iran following the U.S. withdrawal from the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. The European countries have tried to remain in the deal and claim that it prevents Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons.
I want to thank you for the strong position you've taken in the forums of the EU on behalf of truth, on behalf of Israel, on behalf of decency. Israel is often mistreated by the EU in Brussels. There are many distortions that are leveled at us, and it's refreshing to see that you take a stand of clarity, of truth, and of courage, and we discussed how that can be expanded. Equally, I appreciate the fact that you have taken a very sober position on the question of the Iran deal. It was a terrible deal. And today, we learned that 3 major carriers, BA, KLM, and Air France, have discontinued their activity in Iran. That's good. More should follow, more will follow, because Iran should not be rewarded for its aggression in the region, for its attempts to spread terrorism far and wide in the Middle East, into Europe, as they did the other week, and to many other places in the world.
So Naftali, let's start with you. Do you think Netanyahu has been effective in counterbalancing the negative stance in the EU, and do you think he'll continue to do so?
First of all, when I see Netanyahu in Lithuania, and speaking to other leaders there, the Baltic leaders, I'm impressed and proud in the same time, because his visits to these countries are contributing all the time to the Iranian issues and to put it in the focus. And for that is a remarkable leader for putting and saying to the European countries, you are going in the wrong track, and they are listening to him, and they are changing. And no more flights in few weeks from now to Iran. No more European companies are dealing with Iran. And this is something that, well, it's not belonging only to Netanyahu, but he has a remarkable part of the general mood towards Iran.
Thank you. Dr. Kedar, do you think he's being effective in his efforts?
Well, just to correct, the economic issues are not because of what Israel is doing, but because what America is doing. It's the first thing. Yet, we have to define, or we actually see 2 parts of Europe. We see Western Europe, France, Germany, Belgium, Britain, and others in the west side, of which are behind Iran and with Iran, with the Iranian agreement and everything. And Eastern Europe, Poland, Hungary, Lithuania, Czech Republic, Slovak Republic, and more, who are definitely with Israel. The difference is the Western European countries bear the cross of colonialism. They feel that they owe the colonized peoples like Arabs and others in Asia and Africa, and they will lean backwards in order to appease those countries, especially Iran. While the Eastern Europeans, they don't feel that they owe anybody anything. So they have no problem to side with Israel against Arabs, against Persians, against Iranians, and against others. They don't feel that they have to do anything for these countries if these countries do not serve them. So this is actually the big difference in the mindset of these 2 parts of Europe. And definitely Netanyahu realized this difference, and he takes advantage, like every good politician who knows what motivates other states in order to promote his own country based on their mindset and interests.
Yoram, how do you think the EU will continue to respond to the sanctions that will be set in November by Trump?
I really don't know. I'm not an expert for Europe.
They have no choice.
I'm not sure that they have choice. I don't want to be in the American election to the House, so I really don't know what kind of America we will see after November. But I want to make one remark about Netanyahu's policy vis-à-vis Lithuania. I'm fully supporting what he is doing in order to avoid any assistance to Iran by Europe. But I'm not sure that the price he paid in Lithuania in his speech to ignore the participants of Lithuanian people in mass murdering of Jews in World War II was so necessary. He could remind it to his hosts and to ask them not to assist Iran.
Well, don't forget that Germany also got some kind of pass from the Jewish people already in the 50s, not to mention Austria. So what he does today in Lithuania is
what you are asking
only a
is if the
shadow.
Prime Minister will go to the Bundestag, he will not speak about the Holocaust?
Of course he does.
So ask also your Prime Minister that you are so supporting to talk about what happened with the Lithuanian people during World War II.
What is important, he
sometimes-
visited some
Amirav,
sites,
yes.
and
when
that's
I am,
very important.
When I find it difficult to explain something to my students, usually I tell them a story. And the story, sometimes has much more truth than all the facts I bring as a professor. So I'll tell you a story.
Make the story short. Moshe.
Short, very short. We are on television. The story is like that. My son called me yesterday. He was with me in Vilnius. And he said, what do you say, Dad, about what's happening now with Vilnius and Lithuania? And suddenly they are our friends. And I said, look, it's time for reconciliation. And I think we had it, and I remember myself as a child when we had it with Germany. It was riots in the streets. There were demonstrations to say no to the German money that we got in the 50s. And I was there. But I think that, and this is what I told my son, I think it's time for a kind of peace between us and Lithuania.
Yeah.
And if we can come to peace with them, it's much more important than all this politics around it.
Thank you very much. That's all the time we have today for ILTV's Israel Weekly. I'd like to thank our guests, Dr. Moti Kigdor, Naftali Ben-Simon, Yoram Dori, and Professor Moshe Amirav. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us. And thanks to you at home for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and visit our website at iltv.tv. I'm Yael Shir. Thanks so much for watching.